When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
Hey there, Duke fans. DBR Bites, episode number 63 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Joining me is not Donald Wine. I'm Jason Evans. Donald is not here. Very busy weekend for Mr. Wine. In his place, we have the fine Scott Rich, our sort of usual fill-in guy now. Scott, we had a very, very exciting Saturday, didn't we?
Well, it was funny. It was almost not a very exciting Saturday.
Yeah.
Around halftime yesterday, I turned to my wife and I said, this really sucks. I've been invited on the podcast this is my first time to talk football with the guys. And this is the most boring, listless football game that I've watched in a long time. And I'm so glad that they proved that wrong, because this is going to be a much more fun edition of DBR Bites than I was anticipating at around 5:00 yesterday afternoon.
I know. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and say, we got some headlines that are really great, but I'm going to start with this. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. When Carolina had that blocked punt that they ended up recovering for a first down, and then immediately threw a 40-yard pass through the air.
It's not our night. When you see that happen, it's not our night.
Yeah.
So you would think.
Yeah. I was like, okay, we're not winning this game. Like, I was like, let's just get it. It was 17-0. It was in the third quarter. We had stopped them and they punted, and then they got the ball back on just a crazy play it's the right call. I understand why the call is made and everything, when the defense or when the receiving team touches the ball, it becomes a live ball. It's just a mistake by Duke. But I've been watching football. I've been on this planet for 57 years. I've been watching football for a long time. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And when that happened, I thought the game was over. Scott, I was like, this is done. But
I mean,
it wasn't.
I thought the game was over long before that, because to be quite frank, we were down 17-0, and it didn't feel like 17-0. It felt like more. Duke did not show any signs of life in that first half to make you think that they could overcome a 3-score deficit. So that play happens, and I'm thinking, okay, this game's just going to be over now. And I mean, to come back from showing zero signs of life to having one of the flukiest plays possible go against you, to then completely flip the script like Duke did was nuts.
That is,
I mean, there's no eloquent way to, I can't describe it eloquently in my, pinch hitting on the podcast role. It's just nuts. That's the only way to describe it.
I love it. All right. Like I said, let's get to a few headlines and other stuff that was sent to me by Duke fans. Kenny Denard, the dog. Kenny Denard sent me a text last night. It had exactly 5 words on it. It said, Duke is a football school.
With or without Mike Elko.
Yeah, exactly. Nice job, Kenny. We got a few good headlines. Chris Immershine sent this: Starlight, Star Bright, first bell I ring tonight. I got a lot of headlines about the victory bell, including John Grantland. John Grantland said, "Hell's bells, the bell is going to Durham." Those are both very good headlines. Jackson Blower was at the game, sent us a photo of a packed student section. Tons of students in blue body paint, like the kind of thing you see at a basketball game. And frankly, you just don't see that often at football games. But the awesome thing about it is this huge photo. And at the very bottom of the photo, there's one student holding up a sign, and the sign says "Safety School." I'm like, that's cruel. And Matthew Lofton did not send a headline, but he sent a fabulous stat. This is really interesting. He said this season, when Duke's defense is facing a 3rd and 5 or less, essentially a 3rd and short-ish, they're only giving up first downs on 44% of those plays. That is a really good percentage. If teams got like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, they're thinking they're probably making that first down. Duke's defense is holding up on those downs, and he pointed out that Duke has 7 tackles for loss on 3rd and short this season. Man, that's big stuff, and it happened multiple times in this game. And the last line I wanted to quote from a listener, and this is from Jim Sumner, and it's from the newsletter he sends out. And Jim, people, I know we've pimped for Jim before on this podcast. You should be reading Jim Sumner's newsletter. It really is fabulous. And whether there's a full, paid for subscription one, there's also a free one. Jim is putting out great content and has been following Duke athletics for probably more years than I've been on this planet. I thought Jim had a great line at the start of his newsletter about this game. He said, "I had a feeling that a dominant running back would decide this game." He said, "I just didn't think it'd be the one wearing Duke blue." Man, that is good stuff from Jim Sumner. And Scott, that is where we will start our conversation about this game, with Star Thomas. Star Thomas finishes this contest 166 rushing yards, average 5.5 yards per carry. That's a big number. 5.5 yards per carry. Yeah. Also got 40 plus yards through the air, including scoring a touchdown through the air and on the ground. Give me a little bit of stuff on the star that is emerging in the Duke backfield.
So the Star's first touchdown on the swing pass was one of the more impressive football plays I've seen in a little while, because that was a nothing play. That was a check down. There's nothing downfield. Let's just throw it out to the running back and get a few yards.
Yeah.
And he single-handedly took that play and turned that into a 30-plus yard touchdown. That was one of a couple of plays where he just managed the sideline with just such dexterity that was impressive. And that was one of the things that stood out to me, is that he made multiple plays that were on his back alone. The Duke offensive line played well. There was support elsewhere, but he made multiple plays, especially towards the end of that game, that were pure effort and skill on his back alone. And for a guy who is still our second string running back, I guess on paper only at this point, barring health.
3 straight 100-yard games, I think.
Yes.
He might be the starter with.
You like to say you don't lose your starting job due to injury, but when your backup does this, sometimes it happens. But that was the thing that stood out most to me, is that he was making plays purely on his own talent, on his own skill. And that was what was the trigger. I mentioned how listless Duke seemed, but once Duke had that one play, that single, one-on-one play that he performed, everything else started to click. And that was the motivation. That was the shot in the arm that Duke needed. And sometimes it takes one player making one play. And that's something that you can see in college football that you don't see in the pros, when you're not making 5-6 guys miss unless you're all world, right? Sometimes in college sports, you can just be better than the other guys for one play and go through 5 or 6 guys. My other team, Kalel Mullings, saved Michigan's butt last week by basically carrying USC linebackers for 20 yards. You don't see that in in other sports, right? And that's basically what Star Thomas did for Duke today. Apologies. I mentioned Michigan. You can flog me in the comments section later. I know that's what happens when I'm on the boards, but there were parallels. I'm sorry, sue me.
So the thing I would say about Star Thomas, in addition to what I already mentioned, was this. He had 166 yards rushing. Scott, he would have been over 200 if they had counted the yards that he got where he tiptoed out of bounds. And they brought the runs back. Like, there were a number of times he was going down that sideline, and you're like, oh, he's going to, it's a 35-yard run. And they go, no, it was only 12 because he stepped out over here. He had a couple of those. He had one that was brought back for a penalty as well. But to put up 166 yards in a game like this where Duke really needed it. And the key was that he was outperforming Omarion Hampton. We mentioned earlier Jim Sumner's line about a dominant running back deciding the game. I felt like in the first half, Omari Hampton had more yards than the entire Duke offense. Duke's offense was like 97 yards in the first half. I haven't looked at all the stats. I think if you add the rushing and the passing stats, Omarion Hampton was over 100 yards in the first half alone. And then we just bottled him up. You talked about the Duke offensive line, which was outstanding in this game. The Duke defensive line was also really, really excellent in this contest for the way they kept a future NFL running back. Omarion Hampton will absolutely be playing on Sundays someday. There's little question about that. They kept him in check. This is a guy who was averaging, I mentioned this in the preview, Scott. He came into this game averaging 6.5 yards per carry. I mean, that's a huge number. And he just runs over and through and around. He's a great combination of bulk and speed. And 6.5 yards per carry in this game against Duke. He only averages 3.6 yards per rush, which is 3.6 is a decent number. But when you are a All-American caliber guy, when you are the focus of a team's offense the way he is, 3.6 is a problem, especially because I don't have the exact number. My bet is he was at like 2.0 in the second half. And this sort of segues us into, I think, the defense. Man, Scott, our defense was, as usual, was great. Our safeties, Terry Moore and Jalen Stinson. I think, Duke is a fine research institution, an incredible medical center. I'm pretty sure that we have figured out how to clone people, because I think there were not 2, but 4 Terry Moores and Jalen Stinsons on that field. They were all over the place. It's like every play was like, oh, Stinson and Moore, every single play. And by the way, Jalen Stinson, by the way, sealed the game when he went in there and knocked knocked into the Carolina quarterback and sent a flying duck into the air that Franklin was able to intercept. Freeman was able to intercept. By the way, Freeman made a really smart play on that last play of the game where he intercepts the ball and he immediately goes down. I looked at the replay. There was nothing but green in front of him. Like, he could have run and probably scored a touchdown, but he's not certain about that. And like, can you imagine if he'd run a little bit and someone had popped the ball out away from him?
Something that happened in last week's Michigan game. Sorry to say that did happen. Look it up. It almost caught Michigan in the game. You can fumble it on an interception return. The offense gets the ball back. It happens. It was smart. I agree. But so
just go down and the game's over. You do not risk it at all. But I just thought the defense was incredible. And I also wanted to mention a couple other guys. Vincent Anthony Jr. spent the entire game in the Carolina backfield, harassing the quarterback, harassing the running backs. I think he had 2 or 3 tackles for loss. And last thing is a little callback about 8-10 years ago or so. Remember Revis Island in the NFL?
Yes.
Darrell Revis on the New York Jets. They'd say Revis Island was a part of the field that you did not throw at because Darrell Revis was there. I think that Chandler Rivers, we're developing a little Rivers Island for Duke. Chandler Rivers is an incredible, incredible cornerback. And frankly, Carolina did not throw his direction very much. And when they did, he had 3 passes defended. He just blocked it down. So I just wanted defense doesn't get their due enough. And I'm trying to, because frankly, Duke is 5-0 because our defense is that good. Love the offense, but our defense is the reason that Duke is 5-0.
One more guy that I think we should make sure we, give his plaudits to in the defense is Ozzie Nicholas. Not only did he, co-lead the team in tackles, but I think one of the low-key important plays in the game was when he ran down Jacoby Criswell on, I believe it was the first or second and super long after the holding penalty and
Oh, I
after.
do remember that play. Yes,
Yeah, it
yes.
was after
Criswell
the
was going to
hold
run
and the
for a
personal
while.
foul. He had a lot of green grass in front of him, and it looked like a play where, oh my God, we're going to go from 2nd and 35 to 3rd and 10 and give them a chance. And Nicholas just went from one sideline to the other, took him down for minimal gain, and Duke then got the ball back in good field position to take the lead in the next possession. I do want to mention something that I thought was really interesting about the Duke defense. Duke's defense wasn't uniformly great throughout this game. We should acknowledge that.
Right.
Duke did go down 17-0. And one of the things I noticed,
eventually it was 20-0. Yeah.
yeah. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that when Duke was fantastic in obvious situations. When it was an obvious passing situation or an obvious, even a 3rd and short running situation, Duke's defense really stood up tall. And I think that is a testament to Manny Diaz, who we forget, he has become more of a defensive coach. He was Penn State's defensive coordinator for the last few years before he got this job. I think that really is a testament to him saying, okay, if I know what you're going to do, I can scheme up something to stop it. When Duke struggled was in the positions where it wasn't so obvious what was going to happen. When UNC was in 2nd and 4 because of a nice 6-7 yard first down run from Marion Hampton, that was when UNC's drive started to get going. And again, that's something that's something that's fairly universal across football. It's sort of obvious that, hey, it's easier to get a drive going in 2nd and 3 than 2nd and long. But in a weird way, I think that speaks to what Manny Diaz is doing. Is because we know Duke, it doesn't have the pure raw talent, at least in the recruiting rankings level, of some of the other ACC schools, right? So, hey, sometimes that's going to be exposed when we can't sell out, when Manny Diaz can't scheme something up to do something specific. But when Duke knows what's going to happen, when it's 3rd and 10 and Duke knows that they've got to pass, when it's even 3rd and 1 and Duke knows that 9 times out of 10 it's a run up the middle, we were prepared. And we said, hey, we may not have the exact size, the exact strength, the raw recruiting stars of other teams, but we're going to put our guys in the right situation to do the right thing. And you saw flashes of that in the first half. And then in the second half, once Duke started putting game pressure on UNC, and again, UNC's offense was put into situations where they had to be predictable, Duke's defense took advantage. Before we move on, there's one other play that I think that I want to call out. And that's one of these things that gets lost. It was a very subtle play. The announcers didn't even catch it, but I thought it was brilliant. I believe it was on Duke's penultimate drive. It was the 10-yard run by Star Thomas that got us a first down. I think it was the second first down on that drive. That was one of the most beautiful counter plays that I've seen live in a football game in a while. And Nicky Dalmolin came through and put on just a perfect block from a tight end counter. Our left tackle came in, sort of took the middle, the defensive tackle, like the run was going to the right. By the time Star Thomas came back to the left, Ozzie Nicholas was there leading and just blowing up the defensive end. That led to a 10-yard gain. I wish we could, someone who is a better football analyst than me could go into that play for a half hour about how well executed a counter concept that play was. Not Ozzie Nicholas, Nicky Dalmolin. I know you only had one reception in this game, but bravo. That was one of those plays that no one is going to talk about, but that gets Duke that first down, that runs the clock down, that causes UNC to have to use their timeouts. That I think was just monumental in that actually going from a game that, hey, Duke football, we sort of expect to lose those close games, right?
Right.
we're used to, oh, we come back and then, but UNC gets the ball last and here we go.
We have
right?
football PTSD. Yeah.
Exactly. Those type of plays, those are the winning plays, the small plays that Duke football of 5-10 years ago wouldn't make. And Duke football did make yesterday. So Nicky Dalmullen, bravo, sir. Even though you had one catch for 8 yards, you made one of the biggest plays of the day in my book.
I like it. I like it. A couple other things before we wrap up with the football. And I want to be clear that we look at things warts and all. So these are a couple of things that were not that great. Look, everyone knows we didn't play well in the first half. Duke had 37 rushing yards in the first half. That is abysmally bad. This team is not good enough to win games when you have 37 rushing yards. Scott, did you see the stat of what Duke was on third down?
We were pretty sure it wasn't good.
Yeah. Ready? 2 of 14. I mean, this team all season long, I've been highlighting this. This team is just bad on third down. 2 of 14. I can't believe that Duke won a game where we were 2 of 14 on third down. That's almost impossible.
We were 3 and out for what, our first 5-6 drives, I'm pretty sure.
Crazy. No, we were 3 and out for 3 in a row on our 4th drive. On the very first play of the drive, we were 4 and out, essentially. We made a first down. There was a passing play. But other than that, I think, Duke was 3 and out or 4 and out. Basically, we had like one first down in the entire first half, I think. It was terrible. And there are a couple other things I wanted to point out. I mean, what was it? Oh, I'm trying to find it now. Frankly, Duke was dropping pass. That's the thing. We were dropping passes early in the game. Like, one of the reasons we were so bad on third down was there were at least like 2 or 3, maybe even as much as 4 drop passes on third down that probably would have resulted in first downs. A couple of them absolutely would have resulted in first downs. You just got to clean that up. And the reason I bring it up is because of this. Look, the schedule's about to get tougher. Duke is 5-0. You can't be better than 5-0. But frankly, other than our games against Wake and maybe NC State, I don't think Duke's going to be favored in any of our remaining games. We've played, in my opinion, 5 of the 6 easiest games on our schedule. Wake Forest is really struggling on the year. Wake's really in trouble. Other than the game we have against Wake, the final game of the season, like essentially the next 6 games for Duke, I think we're fairly likely, if not to be a underdog, maybe even to be a big underdog in a lot of those games. So teams got to get 5-0 is great, but they got to clean a few things up. We have 3 very, very close wins, 3 wins that could have gone any way. Honestly, like, we're 5-0. If we were 2-3, it wouldn't be entirely shocking based on the way the UConn, the Northwestern, and the Carolina games went. It's not like we won those games convincingly, and it's not like those are really, really good teams. So,
how interesting is it that you mentioned that rough schedule? Well, one of those games that we probably might be favored in is at Florida State.
I know.
Considering how I saw something on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, last night that was basically, Florida State fans are so happy that all these other good games are going on right now because no one's noticing that they're getting their butts handed to them by SMU.
Oh, SMU beat them by like 20. It was just not even a competitive game. Not at all. Yeah.
Building off of what you were talking about, the first half struggles to me. I noticed a lot of RPOs that seemed to be the wrong read. It seemed like there were drops, there were some overflows, but a lot of those, if you look at those plays, they were Malik Murphy pulling the ball and throwing the run pass option slant on plays where that slant was actually pretty well covered. And some of those, maybe those weren't actually RPOs. They were sort of disguised because they were on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. But a lot of those drops were drops, but they were contested, well-covered drops that, weren't completely, unforced. And they were because, maybe that's the play where you leave the ball in the running back's hands because you see that there is tight man coverage on that slant. Some of that decision-making in the first half was, I think you can put on Malik Murphy a little bit. I think some of that too does have to go on the offensive play calling because you don't go from running 30 yards to running for almost 200 yards, out of nowhere. Duke does seem to be a run first team that opens up the downfield passing. That seems to be the the strategy. That seems to be the recipe for Duke's success. And Duke, for some reason, in the first half was really pounding in this idea that we want to sort of invert. We want to try to throw the ball early and have the throw lead to the run. And that just doesn't seem to be the way this Duke offense works. That doesn't seem to be the way Malik Murphy gets in the rhythm. So yes, we obviously figured it out in the second half, but that's going to be something to look for down the stretch is, does Duke learn from that? And does Duke try to be a run leading to the pass team earlier in games moving forward? Because like you said, Duke is not going to be able to come back from 20-0 down on the road against some of the tougher teams in the ACC like we have coming up.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely no question about that. A couple little things and then we'll be out of here. Duke was 1-72 when trailing by 20 plus points in the past 20 years. I want to repeat it again. Duke had 1 win and 72 losses in the past 20 years when trailing by 20 plus points. Also, friend of the podcast, Mike Hemrick. Mike is one of the guys who founded the DBR, the Duke Basketball Report, the website that brings all of us together. Mike isn't involved with the DBR anymore, but he is a wonderful friend of this podcast. Mike sent me a picture, an image of the win probability chart from ESPN. Right after Carolina got that recovered punt and then had the 40-yard pass play, right when they kicked that, right before they kicked that field goal to go up 20-0, Carolina was 97.7% to win this game. 97.7%. And the 2.3% came home, baby. I love that. And then the last thing I have seen on Twitter, I don't call it X. I've seen on Twitter just some amazing, great images of the victory bell. During the game, when the game ended, we saw Eli Pankel riding around the victory bell cart as everybody was ringing it. And then back in the locker room, there is a video of Manny Diaz. The entire like it is a sea of blue Duke uniforms surrounding the bell. And Manny Diaz is in there and he sort of rings it hesitantly once, rings it hesitantly a second time, and then just goes crazy. And he's just showered by beer, champagne, whatever the heck it was. You know, guys just throwing water and stuff like that on him. It is such a scene in the locker room. It had been 6 years, Scott. It had been a long time, but the victory bell is home finally.
Mike Elko was 0 for 2 against UNC. And Duke fans felt very jilted when he left. Well, his replacement's 1-0. So right now, we'll take that trade.
100%. I completely agree with you. Hey, we will take a quick break. On the other side, a little bit of basketball news. We had some videos from Duke Media Day, and they revealed some interesting things about this basketball team, including a player who unfortunately is wearing a boot on his leg, on his foot. We'll explain what's going on in just a moment.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Season-long fantasy can take so much time, but on Prize Picks, I can pick a new lineup every day. The app is really simple to use. To create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Combine your favorite players from football to basketball to hockey to WNBA. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy app with injury insurance. If your player goes down in the first half, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Just download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL. on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
All right, Scott, we're back from the break. Jason Evans, Scott Rich, here for your listening enjoyment. I figure I should say your name a little more often. Folks aren't quite as used to you.
my voice isn't, just doesn't have a spot in people's brains yet. Hopefully you have me on a little bit more regularly. It'll stick in there just like you and Donald.
Right, exactly. You're getting there. You're getting there. Okay, so Jason Evans, Scott Rich here. We just want to do a couple quick little basketball notes. This will not take very long. The first one is this. We've seen some videos being posted online and elsewhere about Duke and the fact that the team is now officially practicing. And in those practice videos, if you look carefully on the sidelines, you will see Patrick Ngongba, and he is wearing a boot on his foot. As most folks know, Patrick missed almost virtually the entire last season of high school basketball because of a foot injury. This is the same foot injury that apparently is bothering him once again. Scott, the thing I wanted to note about Patrick's injury is he had gotten better from this. Like I said, he missed, 95, 98% of his high school season, but he came back at the very end. There was a special national championship tournament. He, of course, played for PVI along with Darren Harris, and the two of them were able to play together in the national championship tournament at the very, very end of the season. It was only like 3 or 4 games, but he played in those games. And then right after those games was the All-Star games, McDonald's All-American and Jordan Brand, all that other kind of stuff. And Patrick played in a couple of those games as well. Not like, you could tell he wasn't full strength. You could tell he still wasn't in shape, but he had earned a right to be in those situations, and he played. And he was practicing with Duke earlier this year over the summer. So to me, this is especially concerning. The fact that he had a foot injury, missed virtually the entire season, then got better enough that he was playing, and now the same foot injury apparently has come back. That is, it terrifies me for this kid's future in basketball. We've seen this kind of thing. I'm not saying necessarily at Duke, but big men, guys, because Patrick is big. Dude is I don't have the numbers in front of me. I want to say 6'10" or 6'11". He's in the 230s. He's a large human being.
He's listed at 250 on Go Duke.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not surprised. He's a load. And when you're that big, if you have a foot injury, sometimes it's just something that you're never able to get past. I'm not saying that that's what I think. I'm not a doctor. I don't know from anything, but I'm just worried about Patrick Ngongba's future.
2 things to say here. One, for Pat, he's at the best place in the world to get this taken care of, right? For him to be at Duke,
absolutely,
have the Duke athletic, staff and medical center there. If there is a serious situation, something tells me that if anywhere in the world could take care of it, it's going to be here at Duke. From a more immediate term, what does this mean for this team? I think Duke fans are probably feeling a little bit of whiplash because they went from not expecting Pat to contribute at all this year. There were rumors maybe he might even redshirt, to seeing him in the Geico National Championship game, seeing him over the summer and being like, hey, maybe this is a guy who can contribute and play 5-10 minutes a game, to now sort of having that yanked away. I think that once that whiplash subsides, Duke fans will realize that this is a minor setback for this team. This isn't something where Duke was relying on Patrick Ngongba to play 10, 15 minutes a game, to be the primary backup 5. That wasn't going to be his role. That would have been a really nice bonus if he was able to do that. But if he's not, if he is out for a prolonged period of time, even if he is out for the year, Duke does have the depth to do this. Duke was built so that Pat Ngongba's any contribution he made was going to be a bonus, wasn't going to be a necessity. So yes, you might have to sort of slightly reconfigure whatever your useless minutes projections were, that were of course going to be horribly wrong, as they all are. but this is something that I've been enough on the pod enough to know that any projection like that is going to be wrong, right? And so, yes, this is a setback. You worry for this kid. You, like you said, you hope that this just gets resolved. But I don't think this is something that for this particular Duke team, there needs to be any sort of worry about how does this affect this team's overall goals and aspirations.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all about that. And yeah, his any contribution from him was going to be gravy. Frankly, I think most people had pegged him as the 10th or 11th man in the rotation, and I think we realize, even as deep as this Duke team appears to be, John Shire is probably not going to be playing 10, 11 guys this year. It's just it's something we've never seen at Duke to do that. I think that we may be a little deeper than usual, maybe 8, maybe 9, maybe 9 deep that this team's going to go. But yeah, I think that
how many straight off seasons have we said that?
Exactly right. Yeah.
And how many straight years do we have like a 6.5, 7-man rotation come March?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Preach. I agree. You're absolutely right. I agree. So right. So let's move on to something else, and then we'll call it quits here on a DBR Bites that is already a full length episode.
That's what you get when you invite me on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. So Rod Baxley of the Fayetteville Observer, a fine beat reporter who covers Duke, UNC, and NC State, was at Duke for Media Day the other day, and he just posted a little bit of video. He walked into practice. The guys were doing some individual one-on-one, not one-on-one. They were doing some drills, basically, just some shooting drills kind of stuff. And he just, his video pans around the stadium, and I noticed something. And I mean, I don't even know what to make of this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So first, it starts on the big men. There's one basket where both Malik Brown and Man Kamen Malawach are both working out with Neil Begovich, Stanley Borden. Theo John is actually in the video, sort of helping those guys out a little bit. Theo's not on the staff, not officially, not that we've heard yet, but I think Theo's just hanging out around Duke. By the way, congrats to Theo. I saw on his Instagram, he got married just a couple weeks ago. Welcome to Married Life, Theo. But anyway, so you know that you'd expect that. They're the big men. Malik, Man, Begovich, Borden, they're all working out together. The camera pans and we get to the wings. You see K2, Isaiah Evans, Darren Harris, Mason Gillis. They're all shooting threes. They're all like, you know, in different spots around the 3-point line. Guys are feeding them and they're taking 3-pointers. Makes perfect sense, of course. And then the camera pans over to the guards. There's Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, Sion James, and Cooper Flagg. And I went, wait a second. Wait, hold on. One of these things is maybe not like the others. Now, they were just basically taking 3-pointers the same way the wings were. But it's significant to me. It means something that the staff divided these guys up into 4 different groups, and they put Cooper Flagg with the point guards. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm not saying Cooper Flagg's going to play point guard. What I'm saying, Scott, is that we might see Cooper Flagg playing a little bit of point guard.
I mean, there's 2 ways you can interpret that. There's one way you can interpret that is, hey, you know, Cooper needs to get his guard skills worked on. It's the first day of practice. Let's throw him out with them, you know, and get him a little extra ball handling work. It's not actually going to mean that much, right? But if it does mean something, which I think, you know, is the more exciting of the 2 propositions at bare minimum, I think what that shows is that we're going to have a lot of rip and runs where Cooper Flagg flies in, grabs a defensive rebound, and just flies down the court, basically leading the break on his own. We talked, you know, on the latest Brotherhood podcast, Tyrese and Caleb talked a lot about how this team was going to play fast. Again, that's something that feels like we've heard every offseason for the past 4 or 5 years. Who knows whether that comes to fruition, just like Duke playing an 8-9 man rotation. But the fact that Cooper Flagg seems to have guard skills in his very unique combination of body and athleticism is a really, really exciting proposition. When Cooper Flagg plays at the 4 in, you know, a sort of smaller lineup, Duke's going to have 4 guys in all likelihood who can bring the ball up the court. That's a really exciting proposition. And you combine that with guys with size who can bring the ball up the court. If Cooper's playing alongside Sion James, who is built like a tank, though either of those two guys are going to be able to get defensive rebounds. And it's not going to be a get a defensive rebound, slow the ball up and get it to the point guard. It's going to be get the defensive rebound. And oh yeah, I'm a big guard. Let's go. And again, that's something where it feels like for the last 5 years, we've said in the offseason that that's what's going to happen. Right. I think, how we talked about that with Paolo Banchero about how he was, 6'10", but had the guard skills. And he ended up, being a lot, playing a lot of his time in the post and back to the basket. We would have flashes of it, but it wasn't the identity of the team. Right. Once again, this offseason, it seems like the identity of this team might be versatility, might be interchangeability, might be speed because of depth, because of big men who can also push the ball. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But like you, it's a really exciting proposition. And the idea that Cooper Flagg could be playing 1 through 4 on the court is got to be a nightmare. How do you plan for that?
My friend. No.
1 through 5. 1 through 5.
I think 1 through 5. And I think you will see, especially now that we, as we tie in the Patrick Ngongba injury, it means Duke's a little less deep in the post there. And I'm not saying that we're going to see a lot of this, but I could absolutely, and we've seen, by the way, reporters who cover the team who were at media day have said it is very possible that you are going to see Cooper Flagg playing a 5, essentially functionally a 5. I don't know that he'd be guarding the opposing team's center. I think in a lot of those kind of situations, we've mentioned this on the podcast, you'd see like a Mason Gillis, using his bulk or possibly even a Sion James. Using their physical, their strength to lean on an opposing 5, an opposing big man. But functionally in those situations, Cooper Flagg is playing the 5 because what you do is you put him in the post at the foul line, that kind of area on offense. You surround him with 4 dynamite shooters and you say to the opposing team, well, look, you can either help out on Cooper Flagg and leave a great 3-point shooter open, or you can have your center try to guard Cooper Flagg one-on-one. Good luck with that, because there's no chance a traditional center is going to be able to stay with Cooper Flagg. So I think that's an interesting option for this Duke team. I agree. I think we could see Cooper functioning like, I don't know that you'd say playing, but functioning like a 1 through a 5. Yeah. He's that versatile. And last thing about Cooper I wanted to mention, and I'll let you get final word and we can go. John Shire at media day was asked about Cooper Flagg. He said the most impressive thing he's seen is Cooper shooting. That the thing he's been surprised about the most with Cooper Flagg is his shot. Look, we already know that Cooper Flagg is a dynamic, incredible athlete, the likes of which you just very, very rarely see. He gets off the floor so fast that he is a defensive terror with his anticipation and his quickness. We already know that he's an incredibly skilled offensive player who can finish and distribute and handle the ball. And now John Shire says his shooting is the thing that's surprising him. Oh my God.
I mean, if Cooper Flagg is shooting the 3 at even 35%, he becomes unguardable. So that's just, so exciting. We get our first glimpse of the team next week at Countdown, which is exciting. But just to put a button in the Cooper playing the 5 business, I think it is important that we say Cooper is quote unquote playing the 5, but probably schemed up so he's not getting the punishment of guarding the
right. That's my point.
And Duke has that, right? There seems to be this cognitive dissonance that people don't believe that guys like Sion James and Mason Gillis can in spurts, not for a full 40 minutes, but in spurts guard an opposing big, right? But this is modern basketball. This is not 6'6" Mason Gillis guarding 7'1" Brian Zubak. This is 6'6" Mason Gillis guarding a 6'8", 6'9", guarding a guy like Malik Brown. Yeah. Right. Guarding a more modern big. And yes, you don't want Cooper taking that, punishment throughout the game. You don't want him ground down by playing the 5. But we have 2 guys who are super seniors who not only have the body for this, but especially in Mason's case and to a lesser case in Sion's case, have done this before. Mason Gillis played the 4 in the Big Ten for huge, huge stretches during his 4 years at Purdue. And I hate to say it, a 4 in the Big Ten is almost like a 5 in most other conferences. The Big Ten is the only place where you're ever going to see two traditional bigs playing alongside each other. Mason Gillis can do this, right? So if Duke trouts out a lineup where it's Mason Gillis and Cooper Flagg at the quote unquote 4 and 5, that's going to work a lot better and probably a lot differently than I think Duke fans are imagining. And if that works even in bit on defense, the offensive upside of that type of a lineup, that's the modern game, in a nutshell. If you put those guys, if you put that alongside Khan and Tyrese and Caleb, let's go to town.
Yeah. And Darren Harris and Isaiah Evans,
pick your combination of the other three guys.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'll just give you one example of it. Duke has a big game in Vegas against Kansas. Hunter Dickinson is arguably probably the best center in the country. I'm telling you right now that if you put Mason Gillis on Hunter Dickinson and then ask Hunter Dickinson on the other end of the floor to guard Cooper Flagg, that is a end-to-end situation that will work out better for Duke than it will for Kansas.
I watched Hunter really closely for 3 years. You set me up. It went at Michigan, right? Yeah. Michigan lost a ton of games where Hunter Dickinson had, 25 and 10, but that was, balanced out plus by the fact that he was getting taken advantage of on the other side of the court, right? And again, there aren't a lot of Hunter Dickinsons. There really aren't. There are only a handful in all of college basketball. So you don't need to build your team around defending a Hunter Dickinson. You need to have a plan in case you run into a Hunter Dickinson in the tournament, but you don't build your team around that outlier. You build your team around the typical team that we're playing. And again, a 5 like a Malik Brown is much, much more common in the modern game than a Hunter Dickinson or Gasp and Armando Bacot. Thank God he's gone.
Yes. All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast, this edition of DBR Bites. By the way, we're recording this on the 29th. Tomorrow, the 30th, you may be listening to this on Monday, the 30th, is the last day that you can sign up for the Dribble for Victory Over Cancer and get access to the Duke practice. Scott mentioned next Friday at Countdown, we will get to see our first glimpse of this Duke team. If you want an additional glimpse of them on Saturday, on October 5th, there will be an open practice that you can only access if you have signed up for the Dribble for Victory Over Cancer, a fabulous, wonderful charity that we have been pumping here constantly because, frankly, it deserves your dollars. Go to tinyurl.com/Duke Dribble, capital D, capital D, capital D-U-K-E, capital D-R-I-B-B-L-E. You go there, it'll take you to our team fundraising page. By the way, we're currently second. The DBR podcast fundraising page is number 2 on the Dribble for Victory Over Cancer, and we're close to
the headline. Let's get that up to number 1. That's the headline here.
Yeah, it's great. People are responding. I'm so thrilled with all of you. So many of you have done a fabulous job. But again, if you want to show up on campus and go to the open practice and dribble your basketball around campus with Duke basketball players and get to see a women's open practice and all that other kind of stuff, free barbecue, you must sign up by September 30th. But if you're not going to be there, because I know there are a lot of people listening to our voice who are not in Durham and can't make it to Durham, you can still make a donation. tinyurl.com/Duke Dribble. Make a donation to fight pediatric cancer. John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils have identified this as the key charity that they want to support, and we should all follow their lead. I've made a $500 donation, Scott, because that's how important I think this is. So,
and I have been meaning to. I have been lazy. I'm saying right now, I'm logging off of this podcast, and I'm going to make my donation right now.
Thank you, sir.
So no one else has any excuse. I have been making my excuse for why I haven't gone and clicked submit for about a week now. So now I have no excuse. Neither do you. Go do it right now once you stop listening to my annoying voice.
With that, we'll wrap it up on the latest edition of DBR Bites. He is Scott Rich. I am Jason Evans. And you know what you're hearing right now? You're hearing the Duke Band playing us out to 5-0 at football. Here's the Duke Band to take us home. No, I had to watch on delay because I was doing family things, and I will make family things work around big Duke basketball games, but I don't, I have a life, and sometimes I have to put a football game on record.
That's very justifiable.
So yeah. So I watched it on delay, and I was staying away from my phone. My phone's just vibrating, going crazy with messages and stuff. And I thought the game would be over and I'd be fine and I wouldn't see anything. And I don't know, like sort of instinctively, like you glance at your phone.
Yeah.
And it was a long game, by the way.
Yeah.
Went well past 3 hours. And I looked at my phone when the game really probably should have been over. And I just caught a glimpse at one text a friend of mine was sending. It didn't give away the result, but it told me that the game was at least competitive, which was good.
Which was news at that point.
Yeah. It was good because it meant that when I was watching it on replay, I wasn't, like in the first half, I wasn't like, screw this, I'm turning it off.
Well, I've had to, when Michigan basketball is good and Michigan and Duke are playing at the same time, I've had to sometimes, like, I'll watch the Duke game, record the Michigan game, and like have to creatively block the bottom line.
Oh, right.
So like,
right. Yeah,
like I'll grab like a bunch of like spare laundry or something and stack it up in front of the TV so it just comes above the bottom line so I can at least enjoy the Michigan game later on repeat.
I love it.